Welcome to the Down South Hunting Podcast. I'm Adam Cruz with Mike Higman, the owner of huntinggeardeals.com and Down South Hunting's Deer Slayer.
I'm doing good, man. Had another good weekend hunting, but man, you threw the plug in there right there off the bat. I had to do the episode myself last week, and I didn't even plug my own business in that way. I was just glad to be getting it done, man. I really like doing these as a team better than by myself for sure. So
did a fantastic job, man. I appreciated you doing that. Sorry that I couldn't be on here.
I only recorded that intro like 8 times. So.
Well, I was checking you out on social media, and we kind of have a thing for the listeners. We don't talk about deer kills or even our deer hunts until we get on the call with each other or with the podcast. So this is all fresh for me. I saw on Facebook you got another doe kill. You had a really cool live feed with the tracking job with your girls. Can you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, and I won't go long into it because you already gave me a hard time about the last doe story I gave. So it got a doe this past weekend. Have my 2 oldest girls with me. So the first day hunted morning and evening. The morning we saw one. And it was my daughter wanted to get down from the stand at like 9 o'clock. So we decided I was going to sneak around a little bit and actually snuck up to one on the trail. And it was funny. We were like, when I saw her, I kind of like ducked back and was like kind of ran backwards and waving the girls back, like, get back, get back. So we like hid behind some bushes and she never came out. So, snuck back up and I was able to see her again. I think I ended up spooking her. Didn't see anything the next night. And, so it was coming down to the last morning, and my oldest had already been with me, but the next oldest hadn't been yet. So I felt like the pressure was on she hadn't even seen that first one that I saw, to at least see a deer. So, really limited in the spots we can hunt because there's 3 of us. So I had a double ladder stand set up over a field that used to be a food plot last year. And we could see back in the woods quite a bit behind us. So, after sitting for a while, I was like, man, all this area behind us, I think we're a lot more likely to see him. So I was like, girls, your job is to watch straight ahead on the field. I'm going to turn around and watch. So like an hour and a half later, I'm looking around. The girls are playing a game on the phone. And I look out, and there's a doe like in the middle of the field. Like it hadn't just like
where they're supposed to be watching?
Yes. It was like, and I mean, it's like a 1/4 acre field. It's not like a huge area, but still, it's not like it had just stepped out or something. Like obviously it had worked its way out there. So I was like, all right, guys, and she kept looking up at us. So I was facing the wrong way, wasn't holding my gun. So I had to get like turned around, and I think she saw some movement in the tree, but it wasn't clear what we were. You know how double ladder stands are, and you put like a skirt or something around it. So it hides a lot of your movement. But I was finally able to get turned around. But it's so funny. When I was turning around, I looked down at my daughter, and she has her head down and is giggling, and we could not look up, which is really, really funny to me after my son had the same problem earlier this year. So to me, that's just like reinforcement, man. Take your kids with you if you can. It's a lot of fun. She never even saw the deer. I shot it and it ran off. And so it was like, I had actually shot one and she still hadn't seen a live deer the whole trip. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. That was a gun hunt, obviously. So made a good hit on her, tons of blood. So I was able to do a Facebook Live of the kids tracking the deer, which was pretty cool. So yeah, that was fun. I think you did some scouting this weekend, didn't you?
Yeah, I found some access to some different public areas close by that I could access by foot. I really enjoy the whole water access only deal, but I come to find out later in the season as it gets cold, really, really cold, that's not much fun. So I've got a goal to find 5 more areas that I can access by foot this year. It's like 20-acre little chunk, and man, it was just covered up with nice deer rubs, a bunch of deer beds. It's really close to a suburb, like a subdivision. So it's going to be bow only, but I'm excited about that little place, and I got a few more places that I'm going to continue to check out before turkey season gets here. And one thing we've never actually talked about is processing deer. So in the past, I've tried to do most of my deer myself, but I haven't asked you, are you processing your deer?
So I had 3 deer that I've got in my freezer. So the first 2 this year I sent to the same processor, which they do a really good job. I like sending the deer there. They make some really good smoked sausage links. They make some really good ground sausage, and that's actually one of the things I look forward to every year is getting some of that meat back from them. But I also like to do some of it myself. One, I like saving a little bit of money doing it myself. But the bigger thing to me is I guess I feel like a better connection to the food and that kind of stuff. And there's different things I hear about as far as ways to cut up the meat or cook it, that kind of stuff. And when you do it yourself, you have a lot more control of that kind of stuff. If you send it to a processor, it's kind of, their way or the highway. So did a little bit of both. And one of the things I actually had been looking forward to doing was trying out some deer heart. It's something I've wanted to do for a couple years and just haven't been able to, either because the heart wasn't any good, or taking it to the processor. So that's one of those things that they're not saving the heart for you. So this last doe I just got, I was able to save the heart on it. And it didn't go real well, unfortunately. So it's something I'm gonna have to try again, because it's not something that turned me off from
How'd you
doing
cook
it. Well, I'll get to why it didn't work out real well. I had hit the heart some with my bullet in the 270. So that, I tell you what, I'm using a 140 grain bullet 270, and that thing just melted the inside of her. It was probably a 60-yard shot, and I had there were lungs on the ground when I first got there, and there was when I cut her up inside, I must have gotten in the stomach some, because there was like stomach matter in different places. And then when I had to like slosh around. I'm not trying to be gross here, but slosh around in the guts trying to find the heart. Finally found the heart, and it's like missing a chunk out of it too. So did a ton of damage to it, and it went right where I was aiming, through the ribs. So anyway, I cooked the heart, and what I did was I cut it. Let's see, I cut the end off, cut it in slices, cut out some of the white stuff and the cobweb looking stuff out of it.
It's like chambers and stuff.
Yep. And then I put it in a bunch of butter, garlic butter, and cooked it to one side. Then when I flipped it over, I added some red wine to it, finished it off there, and took it out. And I think I overcooked it a little bit. But the real big problem was, one, I was missing a hunk of the heart in the first place. So it's just not like a huge piece of meat anyway. So when you cut a quarter of it out, there's a lot less. Then my daughter bites into it, and she's like, oh, and she pulls out a little piece of copper for the bullet. And I was like, oh, that's not good. And then I pull out something silver, which is probably lead. And I was like, okay, game over. Nobody's eating heart anymore. So might have to save that for archery only season, or I don't know. Not, it didn't turn out real well. So that was a little disappointing. Have to try.
Well, you're not always going to hit the heart either. So, and here's my personal experience. You don't have to put hardly anything on it. Salt, pepper, butter, and it literally cannot set in the pan for a minute. I mean, it has to be really close to rare as possible, if not just rare. And it's just so much better that way. Yeah.
Well, next time. And so some of the bites were better, and I tried a little bit more. I wanted to try it. So yeah, that was that. So our guest this week is Mike Kuhn, and this is crazy. He's actually a local guy to me, and I never knew him until we met him on our Facebook group, and saw some pictures of his kills, and he just had a super successful season. So I'm excited about talking to him about how he's able to get that success, because he's been able to do way better than I have on some of the same public ground that I've been hunting.
And I guess that kind of a good transition. If you're in our Facebook group and you've experienced a ton of success and want to communicate that to everyone else, all the other listeners, send us a PM and we'll get you on here.
Yeah, and also I know you've been starting to post some of those pictures on Instagram. So if you've got any success, some kills from this year, definitely send your pictures to Adam, and he'll get those put up on there.
Yeah, just let me know what state, what you killed it with, and a date, and we're good to go. Oh yeah, plus your Instagram handle. That'd be nice.
One other thing is I got some decals in. So we got some 3x3 inch decals, and what I want to do is I just want to sell them for $1 because I want to try to get the money back that I paid to send them in. So if you send me $1 on PayPal, I will mail that to your house. So that includes shipping. And if you want more than one, then they could be like 50 cents each after that. So one for $1 or three for $2, and let's get my money back, and then they might be like free flowing, after that. So
Drive a hard bargain, Mike.
Yeah. Just send me an email or message. You can email us at downsouthhunt@gmail.com. So why don't we go ahead and jump into the interview?
All right, let's get Mike on the phone.
All right, I'm really excited to have Mike Kuhn on the line with us. He is actually local to my area and didn't know it, and met him through our Facebook group, Hunting in the South. And he posted some of his kills, and I sent him a message and found out that he's hunting a lot of the areas real close to me. And I'll tell you, that's some tough hunting ground. And I saw the success he's had and knew that we had to have him on the show to talk about how he's been able to get that type of success. So welcome to the show, Mike.
Well, thank you, guys. Glad to be here.
So let's just jump into it. How's your season been so far this year? I've seen a few pictures. What's your season looked like?
Well, it officially ended last evening for me, but I didn't do too bad. I ended up with a total of 4 bucks and 4 hogs, and 2 of the hogs were on private land early, but the rest of them were all on basically wide open management areas.
Yeah, those weren't even during quota permits. Is that what you're saying? It was just anybody can go anytime when the season's open?
Only 2 of the deer were on quotas. 2 were not, and I actually passed some deer that would have been legal because I'd already taken several, and those were wide open. Anybody could have went in.
That's really impressive.
Yeah, I don't get a lot of private land time in. I've been hunting WMAs down here for 37 years.
Okay, so let's kind of start at the beginning. Maybe how did you get into hunting? How long you've been hunting? That type of stuff.
Well, I'm 53, and I started actually deer hunting at 16, deer and hogs. So I've been at it for a pretty good amount of time. My father was a hunter, came down from up north, but had not really done anything down here. I actually got all my stuff from reading magazines, and then went out and started doing it. And I actually have showed my father how to hunt down here. When he did try it on his own, he wasn't successful, except for small game. But I started out probably like everybody else, stomping around the management areas. And back in the day, I always thought that the furthest I could get away from the road, the better I was going to be. But as I've gotten older and a little slower, I've come to the conclusion, at least for me, that it's about getting to places that other people aren't, not necessarily so far from the road. The 4 deer that I took this year, it was probably the furthest one was maybe 300 yards off of a drivable road.
Wow. Do you usually hunt the same areas year after year, or do you kind of hop around the different management areas you're hunting?
I've been hunting some of them for quite a long time. I did take a deer and a hog at a green swamp this year and passed another one up 2 weeks ago.
Can you give us maybe give us an estimate on green swamp? Because I know that place probably is one of the most pressured areas in the state. And, a lot of times I'll check online where they'll show the harvest data, and it's extremely low. Can you give me an idea of maybe how many hunts or hunters have been on there this year, and maybe how many deer have been checked out that you know of?
I'm going to tell you, I have probably hunted a total of 5 days in there this year. I'm normally working six days a week. Most of my hunts are Sunday morning until mid-afternoon Sundays. But I do a lot of them. I'm out every weekend somewhere. But over in the swamp, like you probably know, there's a ton of people in there. And that's why we're saying it's not how far from the road, but it's just getting where somebody else isn't. I try to look for places that look ugly from the road. I don't want to go to a place where there's an oak hammock within view. Then everyone else can see it too. I'm going to go through some of the nastiest scrub and just junk and see what's on the other side. That's kind of my starting point.
Are you not?
Yeah, the swamp is very, full of people. I mean, it's crazy. But the game's still there. But it is hard. It's tough to get out. A lot of nocturnal. I finally started running, kind of got a little more high tech this year and started running some cameras. And you'd be surprised how many bucks I got on camera over in the swamp.
Wow.
But 90% of them are, you know, dark pictures, nighttime. Some as close as like 15 minutes before I put my dad up in the stand in the morning. We've got a big 8, a nice tall 6, and a couple of scraggly spikes all around his stand. Of course, the season's over now, so it's not helping us. So maybe next year.
Are you counting on people bumping deer back towards you? Because I know a lot of people will avoid going into real thick brush because, you know, they're concerned about bumping deer out of there. Are you kind of hoping that it'll work in the opposite direction where the other people are going? They're actually moving the deer towards your way. Is that kind of your thought process?
It used to be years ago. I used to hunt up on the north end over there at Green Swamp, and used to hunt a place called Fort McCoy, which is no longer open. And both of those places, that used to be one of my things on opening weekend, was to get in there super early and get on the far end of where I knew people were going to come in. And that was good for opening morning. But then after that, you know, the deer would get used to it, at least for the places I hunted, and didn't work as well. Now I'm just more interested in getting in places where I don't see anybody. I've really been lucky this year. I have only had 2 people within view of any stand I was in this year. And I've hunted probably 6, 7 different management areas during deer season. And I consider that successful with only that amount of people, you know, tromping by, as you would call it. And even they didn't mess up my hunt. I still saw deer within 15 minutes of them leaving.
So I can tell you the success you've had immediately makes me want to just ask a bunch of questions about where, but I really want to walk through this the right way. So maybe we could just start out, let's say the beginning of the season. So and by beginning of the season, I mean end of the prior season. You just ended your season yesterday. What does the next couple months look like for you from a deer standpoint? Because I know we got turkey coming up, and I do want to touch on that. But are you doing anything in the postseason to get ready for the next deer season as far as scouting or anything like that?
When I go out and small game hunt here, and when I do my turkey season, I'm always looking for new places. So yes, I don't do as much blazing heat summer scouting, but I will do it in the spring. And then obviously, you know, before the season, a good month before the season, I'll try to get out again and look at the places that looked good earlier in the year, some of my older places, and see how things are looking then.
Do you use any kind of maps to do online scouting or even physical maps?
In the old when I hate saying old days, I'm only 53, but in the old days, I used to go down to the map store in St. Pete and buy topo maps and cut them up, tape them together, and cut them out for the management areas. Nowadays, thank God for Google Earth. I live off of Google Earth. I find places, you know, I'll look on there for funnels, pinch points. I'll look for giant cypress heads and try to see where they bump up against something to funnel game in. I've seen quite amount of deer this year. Like I said, passed up on some deer that I could have taken. Just didn't really, you know, if they had huge horns, I really didn't need to put more in the freezer. So it's worked really well this year. And it's funny, this is probably the least amount of actual days that I've hunted this year than I have in a long time.
Yeah, when you have the success quickly, it certainly takes the pressure off to get out in the field more.
That's not that I don't want to. It's just my job is not allowing it right now. So like I said, I'll get a couple 2-day hunts here and there, but most of them have been Sunday hunts. But I went into the swamp on the first Sunday I could get in. I killed a 6-point. I went back the next Sunday, killed a hog. It was hard to argue with that on doing 1-day hunts.
Yeah. Now, are those 2 separate hunting spots that you were in, or is that something where you went back to the same spot you had success in?
Oh, they were probably a good whopping 400 yards apart.
Okay. But still different. Yeah, that could be a totally different funnel, I assume.
Well, the first one was where water, you know, edge of the cypress where it was wet, had a strip of oaks, and then gallberry and pines. The gallberry and pines are just so thick, it didn't look like there'd be a whole lot moving out there. Plus, they were short, didn't leave much cover. So the game was all wanting to move along the edge of that cypress. And both things were actually taken along the same cypress head. It was just an east-west running head along the river. So they were basically the same spot.
And I'm glad you brought that up. Can you maybe walk us through each of your deer kills this year and what made that spot a good hunting spot?
Well, okay. Let's see.
We just talked about one.
All right. Let me think here. Deer. Okay. First one, unnamed management area, but open to anybody who wants to go in after the first 9 days. It's not the swamp.
Okay.
That deer there was running the edge of, it's going to be the open pine plantation area and where it gets into thicker oaks along the edge of the food source. And it was during a rut time. I was in a ground blind and I had does running literally past my blind and 10 minutes later coming right back by again from the other direction. And about the third time they did that, they had a 6-point buck in tow. So that was number one. Like I said, they're working that edge.
Okay, how did you find that spot? And as an add-on question, you mentioned a food source.
Well, the food source in there is going to be the acorns. There was a decent acorn crop in that area. The whole place didn't have acorns raining everywhere. And one of my big things, everybody likes to see scrapes. I haven't had a whole lot of daytime success with scrapes. I'm looking mostly for rub lines that, transect or transverse, however you want to put it, into the food areas. The does are going to be in with the food. The bucks are the ones making the rubs. So I try to find where I've got a couple different rub lines working through a food source. And that deer, sounds horrible. I could see the truck. White truck in the distance. I mean, I was probably 250 yards from the truck, and I was only 50 yards off of a drivable road.
And meanwhile, a lot of guys are trying to get back 3-4 miles.
Yeah.
To get away from the pressure.
Wading in crocodiles.
Like I said, I mean, I literally could see the truck from where I was at if I looked out the right window of the blind. So
how did you find that spot originally?
Originally, actually, me and my granddaughter were cutting through the woods to try to push deer to my dad on the end of the hunt that one day. And I found some nice rubs, and I went ahead and marked them on my GPS.
Is this a prior season, or that was actually this season?
Yes.
You had found that spot. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, see, my dad was in there. He doesn't need a quota for the first 9. So we were just walking out to pick him down from the stand to walk him out. And that's when we stumbled across this.
Cool.
So it was just one of those lucked into it. I had a muzzleloader buck. It was a real tall spike. Basically the same thing. This is actually a management area I'd never even stepped foot in before that I went to. This was totally new to me this year. Walked in on an afternoon hunt after working half a day. I just took down one of the 2 tracks, the marked no driving roads, and followed that down to where I found a massive flooded swamp. Saw a lot of deer tracks between the edge of the water and big oak hammock, and popped open a chair, bunch of rubs in the area, and about 15 minutes before dark, I heard a grunt. I'll use a grunt call quite a bit. About every 15 minutes, I'll let out a couple small grunts. I actually had this deer answer back and step out into the 2-track and stand there, and I shot him at about 25 yards with the muzzleloader. That one was mostly luck. I'm not going to lie to you there. Not a whole lot of scouting. I was probably sitting down for 45 minutes. That one kind of bumbled into me, but I'll take that one.
All right, number 3
we know was over at Green Swamp. Well, we've already said that one.
Okay.
That was the one that I was actually in there last year on turkey season when I found this area, and it was really flooded last year. Well, this year was a lot less water, and there was more open in the cypress. And so I went in there and scouted around, put a stand up for my father, and I moved about 200 yards down from him. And on that real cold day that we had back, that one day it dropped down, it was like in the 30s over there, the low 30s. I had that deer come in downwind quartering downwind from behind me. Same thing, I do my grunting like every 15 minutes, a couple of grunts, and I heard squirrels raising a ruckus behind me. I stood up in the stand, turned around, And a couple seconds later, this deer just came walking out, and I shot him at 18 yards. He came from that. There's another cypress head back behind where I was at, and there's a strip of thick cabbage palms and whatnot between him. But he basically moved from one cypress head into the one that I was sitting on the edge of. So that one there, I had found that spot, like I said, during turkey season last year. So that was more just, like I said, posting the edge of the cypress where it runs down that strip of oaks. And the oaks, it sounds like it's raining in there. You can just hear them dropping down and peening off the palmettos through the cabbage palms. Deer candy coming down. That would have been number 3. Number 4 was a family hunt. 12-year-old granddaughter. We've had this hunt probably 3 times that we've drawn it. And I've scouted it many times the week or 2 prior to our hunt. And we always end up gravitating to the same really pretty oak hammock. It's always seems to be dropping acorns. We've taken a couple deer and hogs in there. Well, this year, the acorns were almost non-existent. But, cypress head to the north, cypress head to the south, and then you got this pretty hammock right in between, and everything seems to funnel through there. And sure enough, the last day of the hunt, the last morning of the hunt, we had our blind set up, ground blind, and she decided that she was a little too tired to stay awake and asked to swap seats with me and sit in the big chair. Asked me to wake her up if a deer came out. Well, when a 300 blackout went off, it woke her up. And that deer came out, nose up in the air, rut swollen neck, looked like some kind of horse just prancing. He come up, busted out of the cypress. There must have been a doe through there in the dark earlier. And like I said, moving from one cypress head to the next, and I was in between them. And that was a 7-point.
And that one wasn't too long ago, right?
That one was 2 weeks back, 2 Sundays ago,
so that's
something like that.
end of January. So
yes.
In that particular area, you're getting rut action in the middle of January.
Yeah, well, the Zone B, where we're at located, always seems to be like that. The first deer I ever took in the state, I was just turned 17 years old, was over at Green Swamp. I killed a 162-pound 8-point with an 18-1/4-inch inside spread as a first Florida deer. And no, I've never topped it yet. I know I kind of blew it all in one shot.
For the state.
Yeah. Yeah, the heaviest deer, the widest rack, and same thing, that thing had a neck on it. It was so big. When I took it to the taxidermist, he told me he had to order a mule deer form to be able to keep the skin from hanging loosely. Wow. And the same thing with that one. That was a Green Swamp buck from many moons ago. I picked the cypress head where 2 of them came together off those maps that I bought down there at the St. Pete map store, and walked 1.25 miles from the truck by the grids on the map. I said it was 1.25 miles, followed back in them days. They used to have a lot of scrub cattle over in Green Swamp. Walked out to that head right after the rain quit, climbed up, and within the hour, heard grunting, and this deer came around the corner of the cypress with his nose to the ground. So the same thing that I did 30 years ago or better, 30-something years back, seems to still be working today, except I don't go as far from the road anymore. A lot of times I go, I have my 73-year-old dad with me, so he can't make those treks like he used to. And I don't like to be too far from him. And it just seems the last couple of years, I've done better and better by trying to tend to his needs has actually helped me. I scout a little harder because we can't go farther. And things have just been panning out a lot better. It just seems I've done more ground blind hunting lately because of him. And I don't know if we're just hiding up better, but we're seeing a ton of deer. We're taking good numbers of deer. And like you're saying, some of these are some tough places. I don't mind mentioning the swamp because everybody hunts there. The other ones, I don't really want to give them away too much. I mean, you can understand that.
I don't blame you. You might have shared a little more than I would have so far anyway, so I appreciate that.
Well, it doesn't matter what you share with me. I'm not going down to Florida to deer hunt to save my life, so we're good to go. But that does kind of lead me into a question. I've never hunted down your guys' way. I don't know what the WMAs look like. Do you have areas where you could access by water only, like if you had a boat or canoe? Have you tried that?
We have a lot of places that got creeks through them, swamps, and so forth. One of my things years ago would be I'd don waders and wade out through some waist deep swamps just to get to 10, 15 acres of dry land. And that's on the same thing. Anybody can hunt at management area. All they've got is a 9-day quota, and after that, it's open to everybody. And we've done really well in there too. Same thing with turkeys. We take it by boat to get there to where other people can't get to. So yeah, we've got that here. We've done it by canoe. We run John boats and mud motors down the river, or like I said, waders to get back in there. And you know what? Like I said, same thing. It's not how far you go. It's just going where somebody else doesn't want to go. If it looks ugly from the road, most people bypass it. I try not to hunt where you can see where people have been parking. You can tell people leave the junk on the ground. You can see where the grass is pressed down, see the tire tracks, or all the vehicles there if you ride by at the right time. And we just try to avoid that. I'll look for something that doesn't have a good parking area by it. Something that's not so obvious. Like I said, something ugly from the road, and find something good looking behind it.
From my experience, Adam, the state is so flat. A lot of the areas where there's water in them, it's only 3 feet deep, 4 feet at the most. So waders will get you through, and because of it being shallower, there's trees growing in all the water. So there's they're not really navigable. There are some management areas that have rivers that go through them or next to them where you could certainly access that way. But as far as creeks and that kind of stuff, I mean, my experience is, a creek bottom, a lot of them are seasonal, so they're dry part of the year, and there's always stuff growing in them, and it's not really an area, in my experience, where you can take a boat. Now, there's might be guys listening from Florida. They're like, oh, I take a boat all the time, and I guess maybe I'm just haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah, a lot of the places don't, like you said, don't have the water that's there all the time. And one day you can, or 1 year, you can barely get across it. It's neck deep, and then the next 5 years, you can walk across it dry feet. So, yeah, no, I agree with you. Like I said, most of ours, we only hunt maybe 2 places that have rivers that we actually use boats. Other than that, it's waders or even just knee-high boots. Where I've been hunting as of yesterday, there's about a 400 or 500 yard long, I guess a ditch is the best thing I want to call it, where they dug to build a tram for logging in the old days. So there's a high spot about 3 feet higher than the surrounding ground. It runs right in front of a cypress head. I'm crossing that. It's maybe a foot deep, but if you don't have the rubber boots or anything, most people, especially on a cold day, aren't going to wade that water. And I was sitting over on that tram, and I saw 2 bucks and 3 sits over there. One was too small, and the other one's the one I passed 3 weeks ago. And that deer looked like he had handlebars for antlers. He had no tines, just spikes that came straight out, looked like something out of a cartoon bull. And they were thick, but no points on him. He was kind of odd looking. I had him under 20 yards from the stand.
Do you hunt archery at all, Mike?
Yes, I do. I took a hog on opening day this year from my lock-on stand and had a buck come out the next morning, walk the same little flooded creek that I could hear him coming. Gives me a chance to get up and turn around. I could hear him splashing coming. And when that buck hit where I'd shot that hog the day before, he turned inside out. I shot him with a rage hypodermic, the hog, and it was a mess there. Let's just put it that way. And that deer hit all that dried blood on the palmettos, organ pieces on the ground, and he just blew out of there 100 miles an hour and didn't give me a shot. But so I just got the one hog during archery. But yeah, I've been doing that for a long time down here too.
So it sounds kind of like to me that you're basically hunt whatever season's open, and until the freezer's full, you're taking whatever's legal as far as deer goes. Is if in Florida, it's got to have a lot of the areas are 3 points and a side or better.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them it's 2.
Right.
And then if not, it's got to be a 10-inch. So it sounds like that spike you got earlier this year must have been pretty tall.
Yes.
Spike if he had at least 10 inches of antlers.
Yes.
But basically, you're meat hunting, and it sounds to me like you'd probably like everyone, you'd love to kill a huge buck. But on this heavily pressured public land, you're not passing up opportunities until until the freezer's full.
Right. Yeah. This, like exactly what you said. I'm not somebody who's going to hold out at the beginning of the year. We like to eat deer. We like to eat hogs. We eat turkeys. So I'm not going to hold out for a monster buck if on the opening day a legal buck steps out. I said I'm not hunting private land and with feeders or with food plots. Not that there's anything wrong with it, and I would love to, given the opportunity. I just really don't have access to it, so I have to be realistic about, to make the season fun. I mean, if I just sat there all season hoping, we'd have an empty freezer. So, turkeys, on the other hand, I'm a little more. I hold out a little more on the turkey. I'll give the Jakes a pass till the last weekend, but deer, legal deer don't really get a pass until, like you said, when the freezer starts getting tight. Then I'll go ahead and I'll be a little more choosy. This year it worked out. A lot of years, I don't normally take 8 head of game in a year. The best year I ever had down here, I did kill 8 hogs, 5 deer, and I limited 2 turkeys. But that's not a standard year. I usually take between 2 and 4 head of game between deer and hogs, and I usually at least get my 1 public land turkey and sometimes 2.
Are you intentionally hog hunting, or when a hog walks by, is that just taking advantage of the situation there while you're deer hunting?
Well, if I am deer hunting per se, I'll usually give the hogs a pass. If I know that there's a decent deer there, if there's a lot of deer sign, bow season, no, it's too hard to get something with a bow, at least in my mind, and any legal thing is a good animal to take, be proud of. So yeah, I'll take a hog in a heartbeat there. The hog over in the swamp was more on a, freezer wasn't full. So we went ahead and took that one. But if it's deer time, I'd like to concentrate just on the deer, just so we're not making the shot, dragging animals, stinking up the area, tracking stuff down and whatnot. Try to put as little impact on it as we can.
How many days a year do you think you get to go hunting? I know you said this year was tough.
Yeah.
But how many days is in a typical season do you think you're either on the ground or in a stand?
Okay, in a typical season, I would probably hunt. New job, not as good, but in the old, back a few years ago, up until
in
about
the old days.
Yeah, the old. I kind of hate saying that. It makes me feel so damn old. Okay. In the old days, I used to hunt every weekend of archery, every other weekend of gun, every weekend of turkey. And then, of course, the 3-day of muzzleloader. Nowadays, you get a little older, you get a family, you get grandkids, things like that. Your time's a little more spread out. But I still do make the time to get out. I only hunted half a day yesterday, but at least I was out there. I'd say average this year, I had 8 days in archery. I had 3 days in muzzleloader. And in gun season, I've probably had maybe a dozen total days in gun this year. So it was actually a pretty limited amount of time for me normally this year, but things just worked out. So it looks good on paper, but my woods time was way down. But I'm okay with that this year.
Yeah, well, it worked out. How often do you hunt the same spot during a season?
If we're going to stay in a place, like I said, we'll use the example of the swamp. I've had a ladder stand in there since about the second week in December for my father. It's easy for him to get in, get out, and we'll hunt that. Like I said, a lot of just Sunday hunts. We'd run over there together. If I'm going to be in a place that I, have a 1 weekend hunt or something like that, I usually just take a pop-up blind or a stick ladder and a lock-on stand.
Okay, and yeah, obviously you don't need any like super lightweight rig or anything like that if you're only going 250 yards from the road. You could use a regular lock-on and regular sticks and just haul the weight out.
What I use, I've got a game cart that my dad and I built like 20 years ago. It's made out of EMT conduit and a couple of forks and the front tires from 20-inch bicycles. I've had as many as 3 hogs on that thing at one time. I've got pictures of like a ladder stand, 2 lock-ons, a 6-point buck, 3 bows, everything strapped to this thing. It's crazy. but we use that thing religiously. I'll haul stuff, like I said, the weight's not that big of a. I'll put 2 ladder stands at a time on that thing and wheel it through the woods for my father and I.
You might want to get a patent on that thing. That sounds pretty heavy duty. I was just at a trade show and I was looking at some carts trying to find me a better deer cart. It wasn't even a deer show, it was an industrial show. And yeah, I think I need me one of those, Mike.
Well, what's different with this one, you see most of them got the short wheels. So your axle going across, what are you, 10 inches off the ground maybe?
At best.
Yeah, just the clumps of grass, the cypress knees, that thing I'd never be able to use it. We have no axle in ours. It's open underneath. We've probably got 20 inches or better of ground clearance. I just go right over top of the cypress knees. I just center them up between the wheels and go. So this thing, I mean, we've even gotten to where turkey season, we'll take a big ground blind. Like I said, especially with my pop, I'll put his gun on there in a case, a soft side cooler with snacks and drinks. I mean, it looks crazy. People look at me in the management area. Why do you need, we're waiting in line, why do you need a game cart? How big a turkey you plan on killing? And they're all snickering and laughing and stuff. I don't know, a turkey might be 18 pounds, but we're going to kill one from it. We'll wheel that thing out and set it up, and they're not laughing when we get back to the check station.
Right. So I want to kind of jump back to scouting. How does a typical scouting trip work for you? Do you usually walk the transition line of these cypress? It sounds like a lot of what you're hunting is either you're basically hunting the edge of an oak hammock and a cypress swamp. So
yeah.
How are you finding these individual spots? You start out maybe how you look at a general area online, and then when you put boots on the ground.
Well, if you go on Google Earth, you can look at the trees and you can pretty much tell what's cypress, what's hardwoods, which open pines, the distance between them, so forth. And I'm going to look down there for, oaks are my big thing. I want to have food around. I'll go ahead and I'll find an oak hammock off the beaten path, to an extent off the beaten path, and I'll go ahead and put those numbers in my GPS, and I'll drive out there, and like you said, boots on the ground, I'll go and look at these places. I might put 8 or 10 of them in my GPS to places I've never seen in person, but they're looking good. I can see where, a big swamp comes in, hits a big pine plantation, and there's a strip of oaks that slims down. It looks like it might be 100 yards across. Now there's a perfect pinch point to go and look at, and that's worked out really good for us.
Are there any particular oak trees you look for? I know there's, water oaks seems like the areas I go in everywhere. Are there certain oak trees you look for that you'll narrow the areas down?
Well, since I do a lot of hunting by the water, we're going to have, like you said, water oaks, but some of the big live oaks, I'll go out and I'll take my binoculars prior to some of the hunts I go on, and I'll walk and I'll look up into the trees trying to spot acorns if the branches are too high. And just traditional trees that I've hunted in areas I've hunted in the past, I know, and I'll just make a quick sweep through and see this year what the acorn crop looks like. If I can find a place that there's not that many trees, there's only a couple, and they're together, hey, that's good for me. The deer have got a grocery store just got smaller. On the years when it sounds like they're just pouring out of them, makes it a little tougher. The deer don't have to go as far. They don't have to travel for food. So that's going to make it a little tougher. I'm not much of a botanist to know all the different oaks. I can tell you the difference between a white and a red, and they like the whites better. So I'm going to concentrate on the ones with the rounded lobes and stay away from the ones with the pointy lobes on the leaves.
Okay. That's about where I'm at. I guess I know a few of the different. I guess I know the white ones.
Yes.
Because there's only about 2 of them in Florida. So, unfortunately, I never find any of them. But I'm always looking.
They're there. They are out there.
Something I'm real interested in. Actually, maybe you can help me out with this. And I've even asked some other guests. But I've got a tough time finding persimmon trees that are producing. Now I know what a persimmon tree leaf looks like. And I've got a decent idea of what the bark of a tree looks like. Is that something that you key on it at all?
I don't, only because most of the ones that I find are about as big as your pinky in diameter. I can seem to find groves of ones that don't bear fruit. They're just too small. I haven't seen very many big ones in the one place. Years ago, I found a spot over in Three Lakes during a muzzleloader, prior to a muzzleloader hunt. I went in there and scouted it during archery, and I found 2 huge persimmons, and I just knew I was going to slay the deer there. I saw nothing in the 3-day hunt, and that thing was dropping fruit. I myself, I know you read it in magazines and stuff about these people, you know, just hammering them at the persimmons. Personally, I haven't had any luck because I've really been unable to find trees that were producing except for that one time. Like I said, everything I find is small, just insignificant trees that weren't doing much. There was nothing there for an attraction.
Okay, so we're on the same page. You probably didn't help anyone at all, but you did make me feel a lot better about myself.
I'm just giving you a boost there.
I can appreciate that.
We're on the same page, absolutely. Yeah, I haven't been able to do anything with those to speak of.
Okay, well, good. How many of these spots that you're hunting are like a rut-based stand or rut-based funnel? Because it seems like a lot of these spots you're hunting are funnels between different areas. Are you counting on deer movement, basically bucks moving because of the rut?
Well, this time of the season, yes. Earlier, it's mostly food. But yes, I've seen a decent number of deer this year. Like I said, either nose to the ground. The one I told you called handlebars that just had the big, long main beams. That deer never even saw me. He came out grunting like a pig with his nose dragging the ground. He looked like a slot car. He never lifted his head up. Dawdled around in front of my stand, made a couple loops. I guess a doe was out there in the dark that evening, and she must have been walking in circles feeding or something because he was on a mission. He had no clue I was even there. So yes, once it starts getting later in the season, I'm looking for places, like I was telling you before, where I found a lot of rubs. If there's some scrapes there, fine. I'm good with that too. But yeah, anything like that can bring the deer down. The last 2 weekends, I've heard deer, some grunts in the distance, not real loud, not real far, but in the thick stuff, and they just didn't come out. So I know they're still in there doing it. So to answer that one, yes, that's what basically I'm looking for there. As the season gets later, the acorns are gone. Don't really have them where I'm at now, or was just as of late. And so everything at that point now is I'm just trying to find the places where the deer are looking, traveling, looking for does. Anything I could find that brings them closer, like I said, pinch points, funnels, etc., edges, that's what I'm going to be hunting.
So when you're finding these spots, you're scouting and finding these spots, are you typically saying, okay, I want to hunt this in the early season as a food source, or I want to hunt this late season, for the rut? Or is it mostly like, okay, this is a good funnel. I know if they want to go from point A to point B, they're going to be going through this spot, whether eating or chasing does or whatever?
Pretty much the last one. I mean, there's some places that I'm hunting in the earlier season and I'm back there again late just because it's been such a good spot that, the deer are coming through there. They're pinching down. It doesn't matter if they're looking for food or they're looking for does. Now, to me, some of these spots, a good spot is still a good spot. I mean, there may be some that are only good early and some that are only good late, but I'm finding most of my stuff, I'm seeing deer all through the season. And that's what I'm concentrating on, something that's got the food now and something that's going to funnel them down to me later.
All right, so before we wrap this up, I want to talk to you about turkey a little bit because I know you've had a lot of success with turkey as well. So maybe we just start at the same place with turkey with your scouting. How do you typically preseason scout for your turkey hunting?
My preseason scout turkey hunting is normally getting out on a Sunday morning, again, before daylight, and doing a lot of driving, getting out and listening, getting out crow calling, owl hooting, pileated woodpecker, anything I can to set them off. First, I'll get out and just listen at daylight, and if I don't hear anything, I'll go ahead and try to hit a locator call. And I'll take off and go to another spot and do that. And I'll do that for several weeks. I'm already hearing birds gobbling now at daybreak in January. Chuck was with me last week. He heard a couple birds gobble. And we're already hearing them now. We're pinpointing birds if we want to go check them out a little bit later.
About when do your birds start breaking up, Mike?
I'm not gonna make up a story. I don't know when these birds are breaking up. I'm not seeing a lot of birds right now. I'm just hearing birds. I'm catching a single hen here and there, I'm not sure, when these gobblers are all flocked up. Most of my places I'm going in, it's almost the same type of thing. I'm a big oak hammock guy. I'm a big swamp guy. Same thing. If I can find where they're together, I've just had good success down here. Wet areas, I like setting up near swamps. Birds, I've seen where birds like to really roost over open water and cypress. I don't know if it's a bobcat thing, a coyote thing, I'm not sure. But I get a lot of birds that fly down right out of the cypress over the water and land right at the edge. And that's where I'm going to be sitting.
I bet you have some issues that I don't have to deal with. So I'm thinking where you're at, you're talking about a lot of swamps and stuff like that. The water rises, it goes down. 1 week it might be up,
Mm-hmm.
1 week it might be down. So I'm thinking, that bird might get hung up if water is between us, and I didn't realize that. How important is it to know the lay of the land where you're hunting?
Yeah, you're right. If you've got a big swamp between you and he's on the far side, odds are he's not going to fly it and he's not going to swim it. So
you got that right.
I have called birds across the river in Texas before, and I didn't think they would do it, and they flew about 200 yards to me. But I don't count on that happening all the time.
I can only get the Jakes to do that.
That's what these were. I didn't want to tell you that. But they were big Jakes. They were quality,
that's what I always say too.
Quality Rio Jakes.
Oh.
I've seen bird hang up here on a close management area. It's not one we've spoke of yet, but I watched him go back and forth about 60 yards from me and couldn't figure out why he wouldn't come any closer until he finally lost interest and walked off. I went over there, and there was a creek about 6 feet across, and it was crystal clear and 2 inches deep, and he wouldn't cross it. But yet I've had birds go through 10 inches of water, sounded like hogs coming, and it was birds wading through the cypress. So, I mean, each one's an individual.
How aggressive are you with your calling with the birds there? I know on some public land areas I've been on, you probably shouldn't call, very little, if at all. And then some I've been able to be aggressive and be successful. Do you mix it up, or do you just have success one way or the other, one particular way?
A little bit of everything, like you're saying. I'll start out with a real low, tree yelping in the morning, listening, do a little owl hooting first, see if we can get something to sound off. If not, some tree yelping. I've killed birds doing nothing more than a tree yelping and had them fly down out of the cypress and land on the dry land where I was at. Some places, it just like you said, it depends on the bird. I've had birds that you could cut to them and they would scream back and cut you off. But the problem down here on the public land is you do that and they're advertising to everybody else where that bird is, and you're going to have somebody come in, possibly get between the two of you, cut your bird off, spook your bird off. So I try not to get them to go too nuts. Everybody loves hearing a bird gobble, but you got to cut them off. At least I do at some point. I shoot a lot of later morning quiet birds where all I'm doing is just a little bit of yelps, little leaf scratching and purring. And no loud yelps, no excited yelps, no cuts, no nothing. Just the midday stuff when most guys leave the woods. By midday, I mean like after 10 o'clock, mid-morning, I should say. When I first started bird hunting, I was basically get out there before daylight and really hammer it till 9:30 and then get back into town and eat breakfast. I got older and now I'm out there before daylight. And if it's a 1 o'clock cutoff, my butt's still stuck to the ground at 1 o'clock. I will sit there. I've killed a bird up at 12:57 is the latest management area bird I've taken. So
His watch must have been off.
Well, my buddy had killed one 20 minutes earlier. That thing passed. He wouldn't even look at me. I saw him about 100 yards out, walk by. Ray shot him. When he shot, I could have swore I heard another bird gobble, and I went ahead and called him back to me. And I was looking at my watch and freaking out, like, come on, man, come on. And, he showed up just a couple minutes too early and got a ride back in the boat. We had 2 nice Osceola gobblers on the deck of the John boat for the ride back to the ramp.
That's a fun trip. You've mentioned your pop quite a bit, but how often are you hunting with other friends or that kind of stuff? Because I know one thing with the management areas, I guess it doesn't matter if you're on one of the ones where you don't even need a quota permit, but I know there's a lot of sharing of hunts and that kind of stuff as well with the way Florida's set up, is you can bring a guest with you on a lot of these hunts. How often are you hunting with different people just to try different areas out and that kind of stuff?
Oh, we've got 4 to 5 of us that all put in. And then what we do is, like you said, you can take a guest. So if 2 of us draw a hunt, then the other 2 get to go along. Or if one draws a hunt, whoever's available will go with them for that hunt. So that's how we get to a lot of these hunts where the whole group didn't draw something, but a pair of us did or an individual did. We'll all put in for different things and see, kind of spread it out. Like I said, the ones with my dad, I said he doesn't need a quota for it, but some of them he does. And like I said, nowadays I've got a granddaughter who'll be 13 the end of this month, and she is eat up with it. She can't wait for turkey. She's going nuts right now.
That's pretty neat.
Are you guys allowed to use decoys down there? And if so, what is your favorite setup and spread?
My normal thing down here is I'll either use a pair of hens. I've got a feeding hen. I've got an upright hen and a Jake. I like to do that early in the season. We've had birds come running in and just want to put the whomp on that Jake. At a management, I'll tell you, because I don't go there anymore, so I'll throw the name out there. 3 Lakes. I went on that muzzleloader hunt and didn't see any deer at the persimmon trees, but boy, did I see turkeys in that area. I went back there during turkey season. It's God's honest truth. The first opening weekend, Saturday morning, I called a bird in, come in silent about 10 o'clock. I shot him. My dad looks at me and he goes, well, go ahead and call me one now. And I'm like, what? It doesn't work like that. He's like, oh, yeah, that didn't seem that tough. So I want to get back to the check station. It's hot, He's like, just put him in the shade. He'll be fine. Come on, call me a bird. So I went ahead and stayed at it, and 45 minutes later, you didn't hear any gobbles, but you could hear gobbler yelps, very raspy, hoarse, deep. I'm like, Pop, get your gun up. He's like, oh, it's just a hen. I said, Pop, get your gun up. And sure enough, this bird pops out about 6 yards in front of us, and he about spooks it off trying to get the gun up, but he did take it. I get up the next morning to go back out to our little honey hole that we'd found, and there's another guy sitting in the back of my truck. I'm like, what's up? He goes, oh, I told him there's plenty of birds out there. We could all go. So now he got 3 of us going. We went back out there. I called in a Jake in the morning, right after barely 10 minutes after legal light. Kenny took that bird, ran out, grabbed his bird, sat down, and I called one up out of the cypress within 10 minutes, and I had a second bird. And we killed 4 birds from about a 10 by 15 clump of palmettos on a pine plantation, little open pine sparse plantation that butted up to a huge cypress swamp. Birds were in the swamp. We went back the next year, just Dad and I, opening morning. By 8:15, we had 2 dead birds in the decoys. So we took 5 gobblers and 1 Jake from the same, half the size of somebody's bedroom, hiding in a clump of palmettos in this open pine plantation in 2 years, or 2 opening weekends, I should say.
Now, is that a spot that you're going to continue to go back to? Because it seems like turkeys always end up in the same places every year. No matter if you wiped out the entire flock, the new flock would come in and they'd go to the same exact spots.
We went back in there for year 3 to check it out, and it had totally changed. They had done some, I won't say they had done some burning up front, but I don't know if storms or what, but a lot of trees had come down, and it looked like a jumble of jack straws in there. And I could not even find a turkey track in that same spot. Yeah, that looked like it was going to be a honey hole for life there. I mean, that was, you threw the dice and there was a bird there. It was a given. The guy at the check station was accusing me of all kinds of stuff. The guys want to take bird temperatures like I'd shot them the day before and stashed them or something. It was crazy.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit
I didn't know this was CSI here at the check station, fella, but I said, I'm not lying to you. We're shooting these birds. He's like, you just killed 2 yesterday between you. I said, yeah, and this is our next 2.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, well, we're gonna have to get this wrapped up. I'm gonna try to stick to this. I think I've got 2 other questions for you. One is, you mentioned using ground blinds quite a bit. Can you kind of go through how you set a ground blind up, where you try to put it, shooting lanes, that kind of stuff, what you do?
Okay. I like to take the ground blind and have it. I don't like them out, turkey hunting. I can get away with them out in the open. Deer hunting out in the open. The deer seem to, I haven't had them blow up and take off, but they seem to pick it up pretty quick. I like to have those things tucked back in where I got the 7.2 weeks ago. And blind was pushed back in between cabbage palms. I had trimmed a bunch of fronds and stuck them into the loops around the blind. I mean, and that was one of these. I got a brand new blind. The thing is 8 feet across inside. It's huge. And still, we had 2 bucks come out on that. Didn't see it. I like to have the.
What kind of blind is that?
It is a made by Baronet. It's called the Ox 5. The material almost looks like it's made out of the same stuff as a trampoline. You about couldn't get a run and start and put a knife through it. This thing is strong. It's not lightweight, but like you guys know, I'm not carrying it 6 miles on my back. It's a 35-pound blind with 2 chairs, 2 camp chairs on a cart, so I don't really care what it weighs.
Yeah. Wow. And are you brushing those in at all? Like, I guess you use like brush that's around to brush it in,
deer,
or are you setting that up in the dark?
Most of these are only set up for, the weekend. I don't leave blinds out because, like, I'm hunting public land open to everybody and their brother. If I sit in and hunt the afternoon hunt and I'm there till dark, yes, I'll leave it for the morning. But I really don't like leaving them out. So a lot of these are quick, take them out in the dark, set them up, hunt the day on a Sunday, and I'm pulling them down that evening and going home. Even if I'm going back the next week, I just don't like leaving them out. I will say on the good, I'm worried about the blind, but on a good note, in as many years as I've been down here, I've only had 1 stand taken. I consider that pretty good. Mine are padlocked in, so it is a little tougher.
Make them work for it.
Stainless cable, padlocks on the ladder stands and so forth. Knock on wood, nobody's taken a camera. Not that I'm using real high-tech ones. Mine are old, low-tech ones that I picked up on the cheap. But, I've got pictures over in the swamp of 7 different bucks and probably maybe 100-acre area between the 2 stands. I mean, there's going to be more. Not every deer parade is in front of your camera. So that's just what walked in front of them. A lot of daylight. I got pictures of a deer thrashing a tree and then pawing a scrape. It's pretty cool, right in front of Pop's stand. Unfortunately, it's in the middle of the night. They make some great dark pictures, but it keeps him fired up. He knows they're there at least.
Okay, last question. For a new hunter, somebody that's either just getting started or maybe he's hunted public land a couple years, can you kind of give us a quick piece of advice for that person as far as what might help them turn the corner? As far as when you first got started, what made the difference of you starting to see success? Although it sounds like you got a great one when you were 17. But I'm guessing maybe there's a drought after that. And then what helped you get the success?
These last couple of years, when I first started, I was probably like most everybody else I hammered it at daylight and at dark. That was the main thing. The first couple hours, the last couple hours. And that's all I went by. Deer move right at daylight, deer move right at dark. I've had more success in the last half a dozen years based on when I turn on my GPS and I see when the feed times are. I mean, crazy stuff in bow season when it's in the 90s out. I'm still seeing deer at 12:30 in the afternoon because they're telling me that the prime or the secondary prime of the day was 12 to 1. And, Dad would think I was nuts till I come back and go, hey, man, I had a little short spike walk underneath me. And now he's a believer in it. That's one thing right now that I'm hardcore on. I'm not saying I won't hunt the other times, but I will make darn sure that I'm in the stand, in the blind, whatever, for that time. The major and the minor, if I can be there for both of those, really pay attention during those times. That's something that's simple. Doesn't cost a whole lot to do.
Okay, and that's just a major and minor feed times. Probably the same ones you can read in the newspaper.
Yeah, if you get your 2-hour major and your 1-hour minor, and I'm religious on that in the last few years, and a lot of the deer I've taken have not been early in the morning. A lot of my deer I'm taking are, traditionally at times that I wasn't in the woods before. Between 10 and 12 o'clock, or an early afternoon at 2 o'clock, something like that.
Yeah.
So that was that. And like I said, it doesn't take a whole lot of money. Just look for places that other people aren't. You don't have to be able to walk 6 miles. At least, like I said, it's worked for me. I'm not saying the people that walk 6 miles aren't killing big deer or a lot of deer, but in my situation with my father, can't do that stuff anymore. You can just look for places that other people are avoiding. Deer doesn't need a whole lot of acreage down here to hide and live. Look for sign, look for something good, your trails, your tracks, your rubs, your scrapes, your dropping oaks. Find that stuff in a place that just other people are avoiding. You don't have to go that far if you don't want to.
Well, thanks so much for coming on with us, Mike. It was really interesting to hear how you're able to get it done on heavily pressured land, and I appreciate you sharing some of your secrets with us. I certainly enjoyed it. Hope you have some good luck during turkey season.
I'm hoping we do too. I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, Mike, I appreciate it as well, sir.
All right. Hey, you guys have a good evening.
You do the same.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Adam. I know that interview was probably a lot more interesting to me than you, just because it was such local information for me. And I just want to say the areas that this guy is having success on, no, they're not huge deer, and he's not taking trophies or anything like that. But these are like some of the most highly pressured areas in the state. And, this guy's making it happen year in and year out somehow or another. So while some of his tactics and stuff might be different than what I typically try to do, I was really interested in how he's getting it done.
Anytime someone has something different, a different way of having success, I think it's interesting to apply that to what you're doing and to see if there's any way you can adjust, your tactics to make yourself even more successful. So very interesting, no doubt.
I'm really interested in trying to check out some more funnel type areas with oak hammocks within the swamps. The old saying of big bucks have wet feet. So, I think, with him hunting the edges of cypress like that and finding those oak hammocks, those dry spots where they're traveling in between, that's definitely something that I can focus in on a little bit more myself.
Well, let's be honest here for just 1 second. Were you trying to nail down exactly where this guy's hunting?
No, but I might have some ideas. I'll tell you what. If Mike's hunting places like Green Swamp, I'm not even that interested in trying to get in that game. There are other areas that are a lot less pressured, and he's got a big leg up on me. He's been doing it there for 20 years. I'm gonna go ahead and let him have that area. But a lot of these different areas have very similar habitat, so you can take a lesson from one area and move it to another for sure. He didn't necessarily talk about any spots that I'm going to go try to nail down, but it is very interesting to try to translate that to wherever I might be hunting as well.
Yeah, definitely.
What did you think about his comments at the end about the feeding tables and the feeding charts? What do you think about that?
Okay, so that's something that I personally don't really pay attention to because, and I'm a little bit different. So even just looking at my hunting schedule, I get to hunt weekends primarily. The days that I get to hunt on purpose with PTO, like that's just the days that I get to hunt. So if I really have an opportunity to take a day off, maybe when a day off wasn't planned, it's because of a weather shift or like a serious barometric pressure shift. So not my thing, but we've learned a lot from different guests, and sometimes things are just different than what we might commonplace type knowledge of. I don't know. Might want to edit some of that out, Mike. What did you think?
I don't really want to edit that out.
No, you can just go ahead and leave that, I guess. There was
we're like well over an hour in at this point. Nobody's probably listening anymore anyway.
So that was a serious brain poop on my end. Yeah. There we go.
Not necessarily my deal either. And that's the thing with us having so many different guests on, is there's no way we can agree with everything that every guest does. But in saying that, with me not necessarily agreeing that that's a factor, I do think there's something to it is the fact that he's out there hunting in the middle of the day, I think is probably the key to that for me. When I hear that there's a feeding time at noon or something and he's out there sticking it out and everybody else is leaving, I do think if whatever it takes to make the difference as far as getting you to stick it out longer or that kind of thing. But that being said, there are some guys with way more success than I have had and know way more about deer and that kind of stuff that also, believe that those feeding charts are legit. And that goes the same for mood charts and, all those kind of things. So, I certainly don't think I know it all and can learn some things from it, but there's no possible way that I can agree with everything that everybody comes on the podcast and says either. So,
do you believe you can get it done? Because if you don't believe you can get it done, you're probably not getting it done anyways. So I think it's more about your attitude, getting out there, putting in the work, putting in the hours like Mike is, and probably like I did not this year. So that would that determines success sometimes.
All right, man. Well, with that, we're out down south.
Out down south.
All right, man. We'll stop recording.
Okay. I'm still not telling you where I was hunting.